You're out shopping at your local big box store, minding your own business, working around the perimeter trying to find everything you need. And then you hear it. Subtly at first, this is background music after all, but there's no doubt about it. That catchy rhythmic beat, those gently ringing sleigh bells, an absolute affront on your ears. Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. You steady yourself. An honest mistake. Maybe the playlist looped over, or they're doing autoplay and the algorithm is out of whack. Nothing to get worked up about. You whip your cart around the corner and then it hits you. A massive inflatable snowman with a shit-eating grin on its face. 2 rows of synthetic pre-decorated mini Christmas trees. Your blood boils. It's not even Halloween yet. What other proof than this do you need that society is on the verge of collapse? You're not a Grinch. Your heart is only a single size too small. But this is outrageous. Christmas seems to be getting earlier each and every year. Pretty soon, they'll just keep the decorations up year-round in order to save the effort of the short-lived trip to storage. There's a term for this phenomenon: Christmas creep. And the way various social media posts and newspaper op-eds make it seem, you'd be forgiven for thinking it is a recent development. People love wailing for the good old days when Christmas shopping only started the day after Thanksgiving. There's even a group which tracks which radio station first starts playing Christmas music and hands out a shameful distinction to the offender. Christmas is, to your horror, getting earlier. What you might not realize is that this shift, or at least the perception of a shift, has been going on for at least 100 years. Yes, it does have to do with commercialism. A longer holiday shopping season means more time for stores to sell you things. But this is only part of the reason. In fact, the movement to bring forward the holiday shopping season has at times been a struggle for labor rights, as well as a display of patriotism. Fasten your sleigh belts. The time has come to once and for all get to the bottom of why the Christmas season seems to be getting earlier and earlier. So when did Christmas start? You might say 2,000 years ago in a stable in Bethlehem, which might be the right answer, but also the wrong one, depending on what you mean by the question. If you're asking about the modern Christmas, gift-giving, Christmas trees, all that, it started in Britain during the Victorian era. Until the late 1800s, Christmas was more of a low-key affair. People gathered with their families and exchanged gifts, but there wasn't much fanfare. Charles Dickens, in his 1843 A Christmas Carol, describes Christmas shopping as it existed then. There were great round, pot-bellied baskets of chestnuts. The raisins were so plentiful and rare, the almonds so extremely white, the sticks of cinnamon, the figs were moist and pulpy. Everything was good to eat and in its Christmas dress. Notice the focus on food? Gifts in these days were mainly edible, and they had to be purchased fresh. Therefore, Christmas shopping stretched no more than a week before the day itself. This all changed over the next few decades. The Victorians didn't invent Christmas, but they did invent commercialism. Cash registers, mass-produced advertisements, mail-order catalogs, all Victorian creations. These budding salesmen saw the spirit of Christmas as a perfect feeling to capitalize on in order to sell more stuff. Marketing efforts touted new industrially produced durable goods as ideal Christmas gifts. As incomes increased, being able to afford them became a marker of the middle class. Department stores, another product of the time, competed with each other in order to turn the most business. To do so, they came up with extravagant, festive window displays to attract customers. Santa, elves, polar bears, St. George slaying the dragon. In the 1860s, Fortnum and Mason included a live turtle as part of one display, in an effort to show that their turtle soup was made from the real thing. And in order to get an edge, the rival stores started preparing their windows earlier and earlier. This was not necessarily to close more sales earlier in the calendar either. Department stores wanted to plant the seed of an idea in consumers' minds, so when it did come time to start Christmas shopping, they would know where to go. When they did come to buy, gas and electric lighting extended shopping hours well into the evening. Modern Christmas, and by that I mean shopping, was born. This festive spirit slowly percolated across the pond. The main resistance was that Americans hated Christmas. Well, at least New England Puritans did. In fact, Massachusetts had a ban on celebrating the holiday for a large part of the 1600s, and they only officially recognized it in the mid-1800s. According to historian Stefan Nissenbaum, Christmas meant public displays of excessive eating and drinking, the mockery of established authority, and even the invasion of wealthy homes. As if this wasn't enough to make the ruling class hate the thing, one other early American Christmas tradition pushed them over. Workers would go from house to house demanding Christmas gifts, and often threatening violence to those who refused to dole them out. It was pretty much like trick-or-treating, except by adults and with way more extortion. If you didn't give out nice gifts to your employees, there would be hell to pay. For this reason, American businesspeople toward the turn of the 20th century were eager to plaster over Christmas's unsavory traditions with something new. And they looked to the British, promoting the holiday shopping season, family gift giving, and department stores. In 1890, businessman James Edgar came up with the idea of bringing in Santa Claus and giving kids the opportunity to sit on his lap and confess their desired gifts, which remains widespread today. During the 1880s, businesses start advertising early Christmas sales. An especially comical 1885 ad from South Carolina retailer Wilhite and Wilhite exclaimed, "Keep it in mind, it is needless to remind you that Christmas is coming, but we want everybody who intends purchasing Christmas presents to comprehend that we are now all ready." Just in case you were wondering, they were ready. About this time, however, we see the first complaints about the ever earlier Christmas advertising barrage. A Philadelphia Inquirer writer in 1901 laments, "Gift buying has begun in earnest, seems to get earlier every year." In Sioux City, Iowa, some businesses are caught starting as early as mid-October. Countless sassy newspaper quips follow, the era's equivalent of the Twitter subtweet. Christmas shopping will not encroach upon the autumn season, at least not without a fight. So early Christmas shopping becomes a little bit taboo and only the especially bold try it. But everyone wins, right? People get to give each other gifts and business is booming. But Christmas in America had always been a working class holiday, and workers didn't take kindly to being forced into excessive overtime in order to assuage the demands of a condensed shopping season. Progressive labor leader Florence Kelley in 1903 pens an essay entitled "The Travesty of Christmas." But rather than petitioning for less holiday shopping, as you might expect, she calls for more of it. The current state of affairs, she writes, is a bitter inversion of the order of holiday cheer. Workers operate frantically, under extreme pressure, unable to enjoy the seasonal jolliness. Starting the shopping window earlier, she argues, will provide workers with more steady hours and less job-related stress. It will also reduce child labor, another issue she feels passionate about. The National Consumers League, a labor and consumer rights advocacy organization, starts the Shop Early campaign, circulating flyers in major cities to convince people to get a head start on buying gifts. Simultaneously, businesses themselves realize that a longer shopping season means they can make more money, and they join in. The Shop Early campaigners adopt the tactics of newspaper cartoons, manipulative emotional appeals, and even pretty horrid anecdotes of employees dying from overwork. By the 1910s, it seems like everyone is telling you to shop early. One other factor will come into play. That factor is war. By 1918, World War I is well underway, and the Council of National Defense gets in too, running ads depicting Santa Claus dressed in military garb, encouraging early shopping as a way to ease labor and transport shortages. The same dynamic plays out during World War II. The labor movement, business leaders, those focused on national security, and maybe even the consumer, all want Christmas to start earlier. But the one remaining barrier is Thanksgiving. It seems a hard line in the sand. Americans don't want to start thinking about candy canes and tinsel until their turkey is well digested in the stomach. Luckily, FDR comes to the rescue, issuing the Thanksgiving Proclamation of 1939, which moves Thanksgiving forward by a whole week in order to give Christmas shoppers more time. Yes, an American president exerted executive privilege to move Thanksgiving so that Christmas could stretch out its legs. Over the years since, the start of the holiday shopping season has ebbed and flowed. Wars, for example the Vietnam War, tend to bring it forward, as concerns about national security justify relieving pressure on supply chains and freeing up labor for the military cause. The same goes for financial downturns. During the 2008 crash, retailers extended holiday promotions in order to recoup some of the financial loss. Likewise, supply shocks, like the pandemic-induced one in 2020 and 2021, encourage shopping to start early, so consumers can make sure they find the products they want. In the era of social media, businesses almost seem to care more about the publicity associated with early Christmas shopping than any effect on the bottom line. In other words, we live in a world where companies are virtue signaling about waiting to put their Christmas displays up until after Thanksgiving. Yes, this is truly the weirdest timeline. That said, these days the reasons for starting early are as strong as ever. Businesses operating internationally have customers in places that don't celebrate Thanksgiving or Halloween, and have no such trepidation about the Christmas season starting early. Some simply risk offending Americans for the sake of unifying sales strategy across locales. Specific business niches, for example, hardware stores, do much more business for Christmas than any other holiday, so extending the season just makes sense. And of course, the original justifications still hold too. More shopping days to sell merchandise, less pressure on workers, and planting seeds in the minds of consumers about what gifts to buy. Not a whole lot really has changed since the days of the Victorians. If anything, businesses have just continued to push the boundary and realized that people are more okay with it than previously thought. Believe it or not, just as many people love the early sales as hate them. All this is to say that Christmas getting earlier is nothing new. People have been trying to shift the holiday window earlier pretty much ever since the modern Christmas came into existence. The reasons have been varied, but the pattern is the same. Someone tries to start decking the halls a bit before social convention dictates, and then someone complains. A give and take. And though it might seem like Christmas creep is worse now than ever before, the idea that the season widely begins earlier these days might not be entirely true. There are instances of Christmas sales starting in October, even 100 years ago. It could just be that the number of retailers is way more now, so the number of early starting outliers is too, which makes it seem like everyone is starting earlier. Or perhaps it has to do with the sheer quantity of advertisement we are exposed to. The exact reasons warrant psychological research. But whether or not Christmas is getting earlier, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that we feel it is. After all, it might just boil down to this. There's nothing to get you in the Christmas spirit like complaining about premature Christmas spirit.